Hey everyone, it's Triple Mango Thread or Ashley, and today we're talking about the fun commanders that you should be playing, so let's jump right into it. First up, let's talk about Vega the Watcher. If you love drawing cards, this is the perfect commander for you. Vega wants to find ways to draw cards by casting spells anywhere other than our hand. So we really take advantage of this with cards like Future Sight. This allows us to play the top card of our library, and so this is going to be able to trigger our commander. We're going to be able to draw cards whenever we play those cards by casting them, so lands aren't going to count. And same thing for Magus of the Future. This is the same thing as Future Sight, but on a creature. And if we're not able to cast spells from the top of our library, there's also cards that we have that have Flashback, Foretell, and Retrace. These allow us to cast our spells from our graveyard or from exile, triggering our commander. And since we're drawing so many cards, cards like Island Sanctuary is a great way for us not to take combat damage. We can skip our draw step, and until our next turn, only creatures with Flying and Island Walk are going to be able to attack us. And since we have so many instants and sorceries, Cast Through Time is an amazing enchantment for the deck. Instants and sorceries that we're going to cast have rebounds. This means we exile them as it resolves, and then at our next upkeep, we get to cast them for free. So this will trigger our commander, and we get free spells. So if you love taking advantage of casting spells anywhere other than your hand, try out Vega. Next, we're talking about the biggest and the baddest Yarl around. It's Storvold, Frost Giant Yarl. It costs 7 mana to cast Storvold. It also has Ward 3, and all of our other creatures now have Ward 3. This means if a player wants to target one of our creatures, they have to pay an additional 3 mana to do so. So cards like Swords to Plowshares is normally a great removal spell. Well, now they're going to have to pay a white and 3 colorless to be able to target one of our creatures. Whenever Storvold enters the battlefield or attacks, we get to choose one or both of these sweet abilities. Target creature has base power and toughness 7/7 or 1/1, and this is until end of turn. So how we take advantage of changing our creature's power and toughness, or even our opponents, are cards like Champion of Lambholt. Creatures with power less than Champion of Lambholt can't block creatures you control. When we make this a 7/7, our opponents can't block our creatures if they have less than 7 power. That is insane. Or even Cold-Eyed Selkie. When it deals combat damage to a player, we draw that many cards. Normally it's 1, but now it's going to be 7 cards when we deal combat damage. Cultivator of Blades, another great one to deal damage. Whenever it attacks, you may have other attacking creatures get +X/+X, where X is Cultivator of Blades power. Well, if we make this a 7/7, all of our other creatures get +7/+7. We also have unblockable creatures like Slitherblade and Triton Shorestalker. When we make them a 7/7, that's 7 damage our opponents cannot block with. Master Biomancer. Each other creature enters the battlefield with a number of additional +1/+1 counters on it equal to its power, and it's going to be a mutant in addition to its other types. This becoming a 7/7 will make our creatures enter the battlefield with 7 +1/+1 counters, and those don't go away. This is a really silly deck, and also a great way to protect yourself with Ward 3. If you want a different deck than usual, I really recommend Storvold Frost Giant Yarl. Next, we're going to be talking about Gor Muldrak Amphinologist. This really cares about salamanders because we now have protection from salamanders as well as our permanents. At the beginning of our end step, each player who controls the fewest creatures creates a 4/3 blue Salamander Warrior creature token. So it could end up that we get a salamander at our end step if we control the fewest creatures. But more importantly, we're going to be turning almost every creature into a salamander. So our opponents can no longer swing at us with their creatures. So we have Amoeboid Changeling. We can have target creature gain all creature types. So now salamander is included in that. There's also Image Crafter, where we can tap this creature, choose a creature type other than Legend or Wall. Target creature's type becomes that type until end of turn, so we'll choose Salamander. Or we can have Mistform Mutant. For 1 and a blue, we can choose a creature type other than Legend and Wall, and that creature becomes whatever type we choose, and we don't have to actually tap this creature to do so. So the point of this deck is we're avoiding combat, we're making each other player hit each other, or if we're the one that ends up with all the Salamanders, we can start changing control of who has those creatures. For example, Daring Thief. When it becomes untapped, we can exchange control of target non-land permanent we control with another permanent opponent controls that shares a card type with it. So we can exchange our Salamander for someone's Avenger of Zendikar or whatever amazing creature they may have. Kiora Behemoth Beckoner. Whenever a creature with power 4 or greater enters the battlefield under our control, we get to draw a card. So for 3 mana, we get this really neat Planeswalker, and whenever we have the fewest amount of creatures with our commander out, we make that 4/3 Salamander. So we'll get to draw a card whenever that enters the battlefield. Some group hug theme to it, so we have Heartwood Storyteller and Dictate a Crewfix. Whenever a player casts a non-creature spell, each of that player's opponents may draw a card. Dictate of Crewfix makes it where each player draws an additional card at their draw step. So again, another fun deck for you to choose from if you want a weird type of make as many salamanders as you can and make your opponent's creatures salamanders as well. Next up is Lae'zel Cryptozoologist. This really cares about clue tokens. Whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under our control, we're going to investigate, and this makes a clue token. We can pay 2 and sacrifice it to draw a card, or we can tap our commander and sacrifice X clues, and this is going to make it where target opponent reveals the top X cards of their library. We can put any non-land permanent with mana value X or less from among them onto the battlefield under our control. That player puts the rest on the bottom of their library in a random order. What's really neat is that we could get a non-token creature from their library and put it onto our battlefield and make a clue token, and creating more clue tokens for later turns for Lae'zel. So you're going to see that this deck has 42 creatures in it, because we really want to have ways to make those clue tokens. For example, we have Mana Dorks. For only 1 green mana, we have Arbor Elf and Llanowar Elves. This will help us ramp and also trigger our commander for more clue tokens. There's also Erdwall Illuminator. Whenever we investigate for the first time each turn, we get to investigate an additional time. So whenever we play those Mana Dorks, we actually get 2 clue tokens. You'll find that some of the creatures in this deck are also ways that we can have removal. So we have Reclamation Sage, Acidic Slime, Man of War. These are all ways to return and destroy permanents of our opponents. A great way to start drawing cards is Primordial Sage. Whenever we cast a creature spell, we can draw a card. Same with Beast Whisperer, for a lot cheaper of mana as well. And like I said, we have 42 creatures in here. It's very likely we're going to be drawing a lot of cards. Shrieking Drake is probably one of the best cards in this deck. For 1 blue, we have a 1/1 flyer, and when it comes into play, or when it enters the battlefield, we can return a creature we control to our hand. Well, Shrieking Drake can be that target. So for 1 blue, while we have our commander out, we make a clue token when this enters the battlefield, and we can return it back to our hand. So if we just need clue tokens and we have the blue mana to cast this over and over, we're going to have a lot of clue tokens to start looking into our opponent's library. It looks like we're just talking about weird and fun decks this video so far, but Lae'zel is a different one, and I highly recommend it. The last commander we're talking about is Selvala Explorer Returned. This really cares about Parlay. We can tap it and each player reveals the top card of his or her library. For each non-land card revealed this way, we're going to add a green mana and we're going to gain 1 life. Then each player draws a card. So this is definitely a group hug deck, or at least how I built it, and we're wanting ways to untap Selvala. And we can do this with Instill Energy. We can pay 0 to untap our commander, but we can only use this ability once each turn. It also gives our commander haste, which is really nice. There's Nature's Chosen. Again, we can pay 0 to tap and untap our commander, but again, we're just focused on the untap part. There's even one-time spells like Roar of the Caw, where we can untap all the creatures we control for 1 and a white. There's Emerald Charm. For 1 green, we can untap target permanent, and then we have Ornamental Courage for 1 green. We can untap target creature, and it gets +1/+3. So we're drawing a bunch of cards. So cards like Solitary Confinement is a great way for us to be protected because we skip our draw step. That is no problem at all because we draw with our commander, we prevent all combat damage dealt to us, and we have Shroud. That is super helpful. Again, I said it was a group hug deck, so we're going to see cards like Rites of Flourishing. There's Horn of Plenty. Whenever a player plays a spell or casts a spell, they can pay 1 mana, and if they do, they get to draw a card at the end of their turn. And then we see Heartwood Storyteller again, as well as Arbiter of Nullridge. Whenever this comes into play or enters the battlefield, each player's life total becomes the highest life total among all players. And finally, how we're going to win the game is with Approach of the Second Sun. Since we're drawing so many cards, it's really easy for us to win the game with this card because we only have to cast it twice. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, be sure to hit that thumbs up button and comment down below what you thought of this video. Thank you to the patrons who help support this show, and you can also become a patron to see your name at the end of these videos. Be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.